Aloha, everyone. This is Jason Schwartz from the Neutral Zone, MauiNeutralZone.com. We're a show here on Maui, and we talk to people about values. And it's election season here in 2020. And if I was outside, you'd see me wearing a mask because we're also in the middle of a global pandemic. Those are words I never thought I'd be saying again. We talk about something that could happen, but we're right in the middle of it. But we also are in the middle of election season, and on occasion, I have an opportunity to speak to candidates who are running for elected office. And I went to a Green Party convention here in Hawaii, virtual online. And there were a few candidates that were running for president of the United States. And one of them, when I was listening, stuck out to me. And I thought to start by giving him an opportunity to be sitting here with me and you. And you'll see him on the screen. His name is Dennis Lambert. Aloha, Dennis. Welcome to our show.
Aloha, Jason. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Now, when I say Green Party, I imagine most people in the United States know the name Green Party. Green Party has been around in 1992, actually. Here in Hawaii, we started the Green Party. Have you been in the Green Party a long time as well?
I've been in the Green Party here in Ohio since 2010. My political experience is slightly different from a lot of the Green Party people. I come from being a Republican. A lot of my family is strong Democrats, and of course, being a young person, you want to rebel against your family. So two things that I did that disappointed my father was joining the military and becoming a registered Republican. But within about 4 or 5 years of registering and voting Republican, I really woke up with Newt Gingrich's contract with America. They did a lot of different things that actually hurt veterans like myself and a lot of other veterans, as well as really impacting the impoverished communities with that deal with America, where they forced a balanced budget, and they usually did it by taking away from social programs like Social Security or the food assistance program. So at that point, I decided I could no longer be a Republican. That was around 95, 96. And I floated around being independent until 2010 when I was graduating from college with my bachelor's. I reached out to the Democrats and Republicans and said, hey, I'm about to graduate college and I want to do something to make a positive impact in my community. Neither one of them got back to me. So I said, well, this is supposed to be a democracy, so let's reach out to all these other parties. So I reached out to the Communists, the Constitution Party, the Libertarians, and the Greens, and the Greens were the only ones that got back to me. It said, well, we really need people to run. I said,
and I imagine
what?
All those different parties you mentioned are very different in their doctrines. I imagine even if the Greens hadn't gotten back to you, how do your values, when you put a Green Party platform next to a Republican Party platform, maybe you can identify similarities and differences. When I ran and when I looked at the Green Pillars, they were just starting Green Party in America, and it was like, we can have green ideas, but if we're a political party, we need to have candidates, And so I also jumped into the fray here, and actually in 1990, 4, I signed up to run for mayor, and then I switched horses in the middle of the thing because I didn't want to be like a Ross Perot and be a spoiler, if you will, in the mayoral race here. But it's the pillars. It was the ideas that really grabbed me.
Right.
Give me a little hit of that, because I'd like to think that although you identify with a Green Party name, I can imagine that a lot of Republicans and Democrats and independents might hear what you're standing for and say, wow, that's me. I believe in that too. And that's what I'd like to see. Give us an idea, a little of maybe your background and what you're believing in and why you'd run for president. That's a big thing.
Well, I have to agree with you, and that's one thing I keep pushing the Green Party. A lot of times they just get disaffected Democrats joining them, but really I've told them with our 10 key values, especially when we focus on economic security for communities as well as decentralization of power, sending the power of the government back to the communities, that's really something that the libertarians and the Republicans can really sink their teeth into. But unfortunately, I seem to be fighting an uphill battle when it comes to the Green Party. They just want to continue going after what they consider, easy target Democrats like the Bernie Bros and that sort of thing. Where, as I see the 10 key values, I don't have them right off the top of my head, but
That's fine.
Social justice is one of the grassroots justice and grassroots government.
Ecological sustainability, economic justice.
Yes.
Those are, when you're talking about that, who would think that something as called decentralization of power, which I always thought was more Republican, states' rights versus federal rights, would marry up with green, who most people think is very, very liberal. But when you look at the doctrines, you find out, I used to say, we're not left or right, we're just sensible. And
right.
I haven't really been too much involved in the nitty-gritty of party platform, but the idea of economic sustainability and sharing, if you will, having more opportunity for the common man to have a decency in their life. The system has not really been focused there. And like you say, if they want to balance the budget, it seems that many of the social programs get attacked instead of a quote, maybe taxing the rich, making something happen at a corporate level. Do you have any specific things that really are important to you that you'd like to focus on, to share?
Well, I've been really busy working on my renewable infrastructure investment program, which is one part of my platform, and it is it's my version of the Green New Deal. I don't believe in a New Deal of any type because it's basically reshuffling the deck to deal out the same cards to the people who are already winning. So the disadvantaged, I grew up poor. I'm one of 5 children raised by a single mother. And until she went back to college, her only way to support us was through working as a waitress. And waitress wages have not gone up since Reagan was president. It's still $2.19 on the federal level, $2.19 for tipped salaries. And right now, my mother is living with me, and it would be impossible for her to be able to support herself if she wasn't living with me. She's only making about $400, $500 a month through Social Security. Even though I said, she went back to college, she graduated with her bachelor's degree about 2 months after I got my associate's. But really the opportunities for her to be able to use that degree in a meaningful and financially rewarding way was not available in the communities where she was living. So for the 10, 15 years after she graduated, before she started collecting her Social Security, she really couldn't build up enough money to go into Social Security for the way the system is organized for her to be able to support herself. Being that, Social Security is based on our wages, we don't see any economic benefit, especially when there's a cap on how much people can get from their Social Security that they've paid into for 30, 40, 50 years or more. It just doesn't seem fair to me. And for me, America is all about being fair and providing economic opportunity to everybody who is here.
Gotcha.
So my renewable infrastructure investment program really focuses on not only the environmental issues that we're facing, but empowering the communities to create renewable resources for themselves, either through energy generation, transportation, or agricultural uses. Really providing a direct support to the community, direct benefit to the community, and instead of spending millions, billions, trillions of dollars on supporting endless wars and subsidies for corporations are already billions of dollars in their bank accounts and agriculture that does not benefit the community. We need to really look at investing back into our communities to rebuild not only these smaller communities to be stronger, but help them gain employment so that they are a sustainable community.
Yeah. Do you have I'm just hearing something go by out here. Now in this Zoom world, I can see you're out in nature. All kinds of noises. We're not in the studio like we might otherwise be. Um,
Yeah, that's a disadvantage I have in the community where I live. I live deep in rural Appalachia, southern Ohio. My house is 12 miles from the river, and we don't have internet where I live. There's no cell phone signal, and no company except for a satellite company is willing to come out and set up a service for us. But it's going to cost me $70, $80 a month, and then they'll throttle, limit the amount of service that I actually get to use while I'm out there. And if we were to do something like this on satellite radio or satellite internet, it would not be able to stream at all. You would see me
wow.
jumping around every few seconds, and it's just it's not worth the money because I pay less for a cell phone bill than I do for internet. And so I just drive 12 miles into town. I'm parked out behind the grocery store that is just into town, and here I am.
How are things out? How are things out there? I mean, when I think of where you're talking, I have a friend in West Virginia, which is probably a stone's throw from you, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Some kind of springs. You know that name? Bring a name.
Oh, there's
up
all kinds of springs in West Virginia. There's White Sulphur Springs where I lived.
Sulphur Springs is where he is. Yeah, this
White
gentleman.
Sulphur Springs, yeah.
Yeah, he's making a machine, HHO, which is hydroxyhydrogen, which the Chinese found, helps reduce inflammation so people don't have to use this ventilator. And it's actually been curing people, helping their lungs so they can breathe in this present day and age. It's kind of spotlighting, a really important health issue. So he lives there, and I guess you'd call that the middle of Trump country. Would you get into politics when you have conversations with people? Where do you agree and disagree with them? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump voters could easily vote for you, couldn't they?
When I've approached people about another part of my platform, the $25 an hour minimum wage, especially if they were Trump supporters or Republicans, I get no blowback whatsoever because I say, $25 an hour minimum wage because that's a respectable wage. It meets with inflation since a minimum wage it's actually slightly higher than inflation, but it's lower than what financial bonuses and paid to Wall Street, as well as the CEOs and executives are getting. But really, I get very little blowback from people about that. I mean, these pseudo-intellectual armchair economics professors that say, well, you're going to have to deal with inflation if you're going to pay people $25 an hour minimum wage. But I look at the world that we're living in now, and when I grew up, you could buy a candy bar for 25 cents. Now it's $1.50 for a candy bar. So you can't tell me that inflation is going to really be affected that much by an increase in minimum wage, especially when we've created more millionaires and billionaires than small businesses in the past few decades. But economically, this is a very depressed area. Federal minimum wage is the minimum for Kentucky and West Virginia. Fortunately, Ohio did have enough common sense to raise their minimum wage and tie it to inflation, where it's still under $9 an hour here, but it's at least a little bit more livable.
Those numbers, we get those kind of numbers and out here in Hawaii where our cost of living is high. I know I still find that employers will pay as little as they can. And I think distributional wealth has to be almost enforced by having higher base wages. Or if we don't do that, that doesn't really force an employer. And it's passed on to the consumer in some ways, but I just think things really shifted. Do you have any ideas or feelings about, remember the NAFTA, the North American trade agreements? What do you have to say about trade and manufacturing and all that kind of stuff?
I've been a political geek since about fourth grade. I went to school in West Virginia in elementary, and I was the only kid in my entire school that voted for Jesse Jackson. But I think that a lot of the solutions lay in the wisdom not only of the people, but how we achieve those by empowering the people that are in the communities. I've lost track of what you were talking about now because I'm thinking too much about economics.
What I'm trying to get,
the NAFTA deal. I did read that when that came out, and I was opposed to it because I saw that a lot of the benefits that were written in the NAFTA actually went to the corporations. One example, I believe, if I remember correctly, minimum wage in Mexico was somewhere around $5 or $6 a day. And then when we signed the contract, the NAFTA deal, American corporations that moved their businesses out of their communities and, basically robbed the workforce, moved it down to Mexico, they were allowed to pay their workers $1.65 to $1.69 a day. So not only were we bankrupting the workers in America, we were making it harder for the people in Mexico to be able to support their families through these jobs that we were taking from America and sending down there.
Well, the reason I brought up NAFTA was just use that as an example, because in this age 2020, we hear about now when we need masks, so we need anything, that because of the trade agreements we made where jobs went to Canada and jobs went to Mexico and America stopped being self-sufficient creator of product. Right now, we are users of product, but we're not making as much. And to gear up America again, we hear Trump talking about that. I don't like his style of how he delivers it, but I think most people would understand that we need to be creating things here. How do we base a budget and base our lives when everything is controlled by outside of our area of control in our economy? And we're getting flooded with goods, and American jobs can't compete because there are people all around the world making products and selling it to us cheaper. So the manufacturers are saying, whoever, how can we pay higher wages when we're competing with a global market? So when you become president, let me say it this way, it's a long shot. I'm sure you can agree. I think there are 8 people running in the Green Party for president, and they're all welcome to be here on the show. But you stood out to me because you seem very genuine. You're not a polished politician. You're a genuine human being who's putting out ideas and thinks on a grassroots, things on a logical basis as a person rather than someone with special interest. You don't have special interest, except seems like the people.
No, I spoke a bit about at that Green Party meeting about how I developed my own code of conduct through my activities in the Boy Scouts and then my later service in the military. But all of it has really been focused on what is the greater good for the most amount of people. And I think that's what America is supposed to be. That's what the United States of America is supposed to stand for. And that's wholly in my heart. I have no ulterior motives other than to get more power back to the people and wrestle it away from corporations who've been dominating our politics for at least 40 years. And I think, this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to encourage as many people to run, whether they run as green or not. I don't care. I want to see more people running for office because it doesn't matter if you vote for a Democrat or Republican. You can guarantee that whoever that Democrat or Republican is, they're endorsed and sponsored by corporate money. And we need to get away from corporations deciding our fate. Our biggest fear when we created the country was that the government was going to overreach because the government had so much power. But as we've evolved and invested so much time and energy to developing corporations and economic system that benefits those corporations, we've lost sight of the people, the cogs of those wheels that make the economics actually move. I've talked also a lot about, tie this in with the $25 an hour minimum wage. When my father was a plumber in the union, and he asked me after he started his own business to join the plumbing union. And I used to work with him when I was a kid, go out to work with him and help him lay the pipe or glue pieces together. Before he died, he started a business with his brother, and they asked me to join the union. And at the time, I was making $16, $17 an hour working at a TV station. And I said, well, Dad, what's the apprentice pay? He said, $14 an hour. I said, well, I don't want to take a pay cut. He said, well, I want you to take over the business. And I said, that's just not something I'm really interested in right now, especially since I'm making so much money. A few years ago, I looked into it about going back in, maybe getting in my apprenticeship to have that documentation to be able to do that in a professional manner. Apprentices are still starting out almost 20 years later at $14 an hour. And because labor stopped fighting for increases in minimum wage, their wages aren't increasing, so they're getting left behind just as much as the person who's putting fries in the basket at McDonald's.
Yeah, it is odd what's happened, but again, it's like you just said, no one was fighting for them to give them an increasing share as things were going up here with inflation. What made you decide to run for president? I mean, you could have run for a different office. That's a big move. So when someone's running for president, they usually have something that stirred you to make that kind of move. By the way, audience, on radio, you may not see, this is Dennis Lambert, who's a candidate here in 2020, Green candidate for president of the United States. Give me that one, Dennis. What drove you to run for this office? And what are you looking to do that made you feel you wanted to run for president?
I ran, as I said, in 2010 for the Ohio State House for the Green Party to help them maintain their ballot status. And I've run for Congress a couple times since. But the thing that really got me to want to run for president was to try to encourage more people to run for president. Somebody from a background such as myself who grew up poor, we haven't had a poor president since Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant. The rest of them have come from money or have been millionaires. If not prior to, they're definitely become millionaires in office and beyond. So I want to encourage every person to run for office. But why I run for president, I could be doing that if I were to run for the State House again. But I saw when I ran in 2010, the only debate I was allowed to attend was through the League of Women Voters. And when I was talking about my platform at that meeting, not even before the end of that meeting, both the Democrat and the Republican started echoing my talking points. And at the end of that meeting, a young Republican came up to me and said, boy, we'd like to have you run as a Republican next time you run. I didn't run as a Republican. And then in 2014, when I ran for the Congress, I was at a meeting in Marietta, Ohio, broadcast on C-SPAN, another debate. And once again, I influenced both the Democrat and Republican. They started using my talking points. And at the end of that meeting, the Democrat who used to be the chair of the Democratic organization in that county came up to me and said, boy, we'd love to have you run as a Democrat. So I know that I might not get a lot of reach, but I can change a lot of the conversation with my platform. And hopefully I can provide some influence, not only to the presidential candidates, but to any other candidate who's running at any other position down the line. And this is what I really encourage the Green Party to run every election, every time, every office, because that's the only way that we're going to generate enough political power to overturn the two-party power system that exists and strangles the economic and social advancement that we really need to help create an equal society.
Right. This is a sort of an interesting question to me. What makes you different, for example, if I was going to admit, what's different than you than, say, President Donald Trump? Anything jump right out at you? I mean, when you become president, what will you do different?
Well, I can tell one thing right off the bat. The difference between myself and Donald Trump is I never inherited millions of dollars, and I actually labor with my hands. Uh, though I also have a lot of intellectual capacity to work with my mind as well. I think the biggest difference for me and Donald Trump is I would not appoint anybody to my cabinet or any other position in government that is either racist, white supremacist, or worked in the corporation field in which they'd be placed, such as Sonny Perdue and head of Department of Agriculture. I would never do something like that. I would rather appoint a professor who spent 20 or 30 years studying soil in his community and has actually worked with farmers on a hands-on basis. I would like to see more people who actually fought for the rights of people in the Department of Justice. Somebody like Brian Stevenson would be my ideal person to be the head of the Department of Justice. I would like to see somebody who's actually been in HUD housing to be head of housing and human services. We need to actually fill these positions with experts that are not corporate funded, but have not only the knowledge and skills to do the job, but also have the hands-on experience with the people to understand the impact on the grand scale of what it's going to do down onto the lower levels.
Right now, we're facing some pretty significant things here in the United States. This pandemic for COVID-19. And any immediate differences on what you would do now, or I don't want to say when this began, we're right now, here we are. Any things that you would do differently now?
Right now, other than having a universal healthcare system, which would take quite a while to ramp up, really we need to have a lot more availability of testing. I've only been able to find one place in my community, which is the tri-state area, which includes Kentucky, West Virginia, and Ohio. There's only one place, two places actually, in my entire community that we can actually go and get tested that I'm aware of. So the only way that we are actually going to prevent the increased spread of this is to have that testing on demand and constantly retesting the people who have already been tested, because that infection may not show up in that first test. And honestly, I'd rather have a false negative than a false positive on a lot of these tests. And unfortunately, there's been more false positives than false negatives. Not only that, but we're starting to see a lot more of the personal protective equipment going to the hospitals. We need to be sharing a lot more information. I've realized that through my work as a social worker with veterans for a while, that the HIPAA is not necessarily a good thing. It prevents a lot of doctors from communicating with each other what issues that their patients are facing, and it prevents the adequate treatment for a lot of these people. So we need to loosen the restrictions of HIPAA and make healthcare a human right. That way we are addressing the needs of all the people. And there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, well, especially with the comorbidities that are affecting the people a lot more, like obesity, diabetes, smokers, the age of the people who are contracting it. A lot of things that are contributing to that, but I am optimistic in that there's a lot of organizations, especially nonprofits, that are concentrating their efforts and research into developing a solution to this. When Trump got elected, one of my Marine friends, who's a Democrat, said, Dennis, what do you think about Trump getting elected? And I said, generally it's when we're faced with our greatest challenges, that is when our country rises to meet that challenge and actually starts doing the things that we were meant to do, doing the right things and taking care of the people. So despite the evil connotations that we hear about the Trump administration, I still have a lot of optimism that the people are going to see things for the way they are and react in a way that is more embracing of their fellow man.
Wow. Um, that's when I'm hearing that, I'm trying to put it into specific situations. The news is filled with prejudice and with things that are way out of whack. That you know, I'm a dreamer. In fact, I have always thinking for that man will be better. I am a bit of concern now. I mean, we are fighting each other just horribly. I mean, if I was going to say what's different than you than Trump, someone that leads by showing that they are too macho to wear a mask, that insults everybody around because maybe you think you're stronger than dirt, but the people around would like to be protected from you, not you. You are who you are. I just, there's too much of that going on, and I watch that happening socially in situations out there. Um, Again, I'm
Yeah, I think one of the big differences between myself and Donald Trump also is modesty. I don't think he has any modesty or compassion in his heart whatsoever. And I don't like bragging about myself, but there are certain accomplishments that I've done that I'm very proud of, and it's not an ego thing. It's something more about I've done something that I've seen in my community that needed to be done, and I did it. Either that or I accomplished certain goals that I set for myself. And I don't feel good just by people praising me. I feel better when people are criticizing me, telling me what I need to change or what I'm thinking wrong. I like having a lot of different opinions thrown at me as well. Unlike a lot of my opponents, I watch Fox News occasionally to understand the other side. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh a lot more than I do now. So I do occasionally will listen to him to understand. I mean, there's a certain point where I can't stand it, but I want to hear what he's talking about so I can understand what their issues are and how I can address them through my own lens.
when you say you can't stand it, what can't you stand? I I can
Well,
think of things, but I'm trying to give the people a little more color and better understanding your nature and your direction. That's why I'm asking.
I think it's decoding what he's actually talking about. One of the things that I really found offensive when I was listening to him on a regular basis was that he would talk about this bill or that bill and how the Democrats pushed it through, and it's going to cost this many jobs and it's going to do this much economic harm. When I started first questioning that, I would start to look at what those bills actually said, and half the time the sponsors were Republicans, and they were still, even though the Republicans were in control of the House and the Senate, they were still blaming the Democrats for these bills getting passed. And really, I think that was the genesis of a lot of this partisan rancor that we're seeing. And that started just 30 years ago. And really, we have to look at what unites us instead of what divides us. We may agree on a lot of things, but we also have different approaches on how we're going to solve those problems. But we have to have respect for those people with differing opinions because their opinions are based on their experiences. And maybe they haven't had the same experiences as you have. But you have to understand, what that other person is thinking, where they're coming from, and respect that, but not be disrespectful in the argument. And unfortunately, I mean, that really upsets me that we have so much partisan rancor that, damn the Democrats or damn the Republicans, that, they're the reason why everything's gone bad. Well, what happens when we're under one party rule? That means that everything you want is accomplished. What happens then? What happens when the totalitarian rule is in effect and we only have one party in control? What happens then?
Well, I guess that we're not in that situation, but I keep thinking that what I'm watching, the leadership is dividing and dividing, and I can't imagine how to bring America back together again. I thought to myself that Bernie Sanders attracted people on the left and the right. A lot of people kind of warmed to his program, and yet there he is out of the picture totally, and we're faced with what seemed like uh, different sides of sort of the same coin. I don't really sense a huge difference between, I mean, in specifics in doctrine, yes, but um, I never really know what Trump feels. I mean, that may sound funny, but I keep hearing him talk and then he switches from here to here to here and doesn't really show us why. He proclaims it like a king. And Biden is also very careful in what he says, and that he doesn't say really specific. These guys aren't getting specific. Do you have anything specific? I mean, when you become president, do you have a top three things that you want to do? Or I hope I'm asking it in a fair way. I'm saying, okay, now you're looking to do this. What are some of the real meat? What are the things that you would like to see that make you so different? We recognize you're a more gentle and I want to say you're open to hearing everyone's position. Give us some specifics of what you might do as if you were in that office or in an office like that.
Aside from my platform of the universal health care, Medicare for all, $25 an hour minimum wage.
Here we are right now, and we've got a country that is economically buried, okay? Well, everyone knows that the value of the dollar is going out the window. We keep printing money as if it actually had value, and so the real value of our dollar is going down. International currencies are trying to replace the dollar as a global standard, and we're being marginalized by our non-involvement with other people at in cooperative levels for the environment. We're not there. We're using our bravado. I'm just trying to get a feeling. Here you are now. You're now president. What are some of the things that you would see doing quickly, and where, I'm trying to look for some direction change or a thing that you would do to help make things better or would propose?
Economic policy, I think enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act would definitely be a big step to providing a democratization of our money and actually providing benefit to the people. Breaking up a lot of these big businesses, I think, would actually increase the competition, especially when it comes to communication. We only have 3 or 5 major corporations who control all of our media. So really, we don't have any competition on a lot of different levels economically. So not only enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act, but moving away from what they call free trade and working more towards fair trade, where we're actually respecting the work from people overseas and making sure that, while we're paying $6, $7 for a cup of coffee, there is an equivalent amount being sent down to the person in Madagascar that's growing the coffee or wherever it is, so that they have the opportunity to expand their businesses, provide more benefit to their communities. I definitely would want to shrink our military footprint. I want to end all wars and actively wage peace. We certainly do not have to look at everybody as our enemy in the world. United States is definitely a melting pot. Other than the people who were here prior to the white man settling, we're a nation of people who are immigrants. We came from all sorts of different other places, and that we're here now. So we have to respect the diversity of our community as well as our planet. And that means taking a non-adversarial role against every other country, the 186 countries in the nation or in the world. We can't be an adversary and can't fight all of these people at the same time. We're currently fighting 7 different wars. 5 of them are of Obama's making, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which is absolutely insane to me. But ending war, providing more economic benefits. I put out a press release not too long ago about eliminating white supremacists and racists from office. Get all of them out of office. They say one rotten apple spoils the bunch. Well, let's let's get rid of the whole bunch and start all over again, because we don't need our money based on our Constitution that is all about equality for everybody, supporting people who don't believe in equality for everyone. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head other than those major things, but really, I mean, also diversifying our economy to, and this is part of my renewable infrastructure investment program, diversifying our economy to be more localized so that agriculture is more supported on a local basis instead of having CAFOs and large feedlots, where I know that's not much of an issue for Hawaii, but here in Ohio, we have a lot of pig lagoons where we have hundreds of thousands of pigs being grown in one area, and they have to deal with the mess of it. And it's just, they have giant ponds of pig feces and urine sitting out in the open. And when the land floods, that goes into our streams. And I think the numbers that I have from 2010 was about 80% of Ohio gets their fresh drinking water from this rivers and streams. It's closer to 95% of them who are on the river. So we really need to take care of our natural resources to be able to sustain ourselves, not only in the immediate future, but we need to plan for our generations. And this is one of the things that I found particularly upsetting about our government, is that we don't plan for the future. The only time our government has ever had a long-term plan for anything was the space program. We had 10 years to plan to go to the moon. And after that, we decided, it wasn't really worth it anymore. So our society is not really planned for, geared to plan for the future. Sure, we have public schools, but we're not really teaching those kids critical thinking to actually develop solutions for the future. We're just teaching them to pass a test. And really, we need to turn that around as far as education goes. We need to actually enrich the education, provide agricultural studies classes for kids so they're growing their own food for their lunch programs, or that they're building the tables that they'll be sitting at for lunch, or maybe they're putting the new wiring the building for electricity or internet, or building something with their hands so that they have a skill beyond just the critical thinking, and avoid the situation where we are, where they're just teaching to a test and giving limited information. This is one of the biggest things I've been disappointed in my own educational experience, and why it took me 10 years to go back to school to get my bachelor's degree. I felt self-education was the best opportunity for me to learn more. And I have hope that our electronic communication systems are going to be able to provide that. Not only are they providing that now through YouTube and a lot of other sites, but in the future, I see us having our higher education online, some participatory on hands part, but a lot of the stuff that we need to learn or can learn can come from qualified sources and delivered to us electronically.
Okay. I'm guessing we're getting close to an hour's time. Let's now say I'm giving you time for a summary, and you take as much time as you need. Here, I'm giving you a platform. Dennis Lambert, running for president. What do you want to say to people?
I would like to tell people to get out and vote. I mean, I've always told the people in the Green Party, and it's been my own experience every time that I've run, that I've gotten people who don't normally vote, or who weren't going to vote in that election, to come out and vote, even if they just voted for me. This is one of the greatest things about a democracy, is that you have a choice in what happens in our government. And unfortunately, too many people, 45% to 50, almost 50% of the people who are eligible to vote don't turn out to vote. And it's not always that they don't have the opportunity. It's just sometimes there are just not people there for them to vote for. So if you're in that situation that you don't want to vote and you don't have anybody to vote for, I encourage you to be that person for people to vote for. I don't care if you run as a Democrat or Republican or Green. I just want to see more people running and try to wrestle our power back and put it back in the hands of the people where it belongs. because the Constitution says we the people, not we the corporations. I believe a lot of what my platform says, and my website's at www.dlpotus2020.com. All my social media is the same, dlpotus2020.com. We really need.
Let's say that one more time. DLPOTUS 2020.com. Okay.
Yes, yeah, that's my website. And besides the things that are listed there, we really need to take our collective responsibility for our future. You know, the only reason to have children is because you have hope for the future. So let's actually put something in the hands of our children so that they can actually have a future, whether it be actual tangible things such as healthcare, or just the concept of hope for a future where they can think about what direction they want to take their lives in, you know, have the opportunities to start a business that won't go straight under from healthcare costs or over regulation. We really need to come together. And honestly, I think after this COVID thing passes and we start looking at how we're really truly going to open up, we need to look at how is it going to be equitable for everyone, not just for those few who are at the levers of control. You know, the American citizen got bought out for $1,200 in that CARES bill. Over $4 trillion went to corporation benefits, and most of that didn't go to small businesses, despite what it was created for. You know, most of that money actually went to, you know, big companies like CVS or Shake Shack or some of these other big corporations. I forget exactly the name of the fellow, but one of Trump's supporters ended up benefiting about $56 million from the CARES Act. So we need to shift from maintaining this idea of an economy that is supposed to benefit everybody, but really it only benefits Wall Street. It doesn't benefit Main Street, and it doesn't benefit the people in my community. You know, where I live, like I said, it's rural Appalachia. You know, fashion and music comes about 6 months to a year after it hits everywhere else in the United States. But with the electronic systems that we have, and electronic communications, we can actually change that and make a more level playing field for everybody. So that's my hope for the future, is that we take the power back from corporations, and that the people are really truly taken care of from that point on.
Well, Dennis, I want to thank you for being here on my show. And here in Hawaii, you know, we have specific issues and things. I don't see any reason that people out here, they sound like the people where you are there. They're really a smaller community, even though Hawaii is a state like this. Decentralized agriculture, decentralized power, which again, you could be Republican and say that, you know, but green. And the fact that you really feel that people need to be getting involved and getting themselves out there and voting. And if you don't like what you see, running and being involved.
Yeah, if you could spend half an hour a week watching a TV show, then you could spend half an hour a week organizing in your community to make it better, either by running in elections or supporting somebody who you truly believe is interested in supporting the community and helping the people.
Gotcha. Well, Dennis, it's been a pleasure having you here. And if there's anything we can do to be helpful to you, you're always welcome to call back. You're always welcome to jump on the air here with us.
I'd love to come to Hawaii. You know, I went to basic training with a fellow named Fong, who immigrated from Taiwan to Hawaii. And unfortunately, he had flat feet and had an honorable discharge for that. So Jackie Fong, if you're out there, brother, ni hao. It's good to see you. Hopefully I can get out there to Hawaii and see you sometime.
There we go. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching this. And I want to echo that same thing. If you don't vote, you're not going to be able to really give your vote to be able to shift the power of the people that are in offices. And if you don't see them, maybe it's too late to run this time, but I'm really hoping that all of us will come together and make this country the great country that it is together. And maybe we can be part of uh, a plan to get toward peace. I really like that notion a lot. You know, Department of Defense, we only defend ourselves because we're in need of defending ourselves, I guess. Why can't we all work together and help each other and bring down the walls and not put up and create walls? I don't mean it literally. I'm talking about, a little bit more cooperation and caring for our fellow man. A lot of people believe it, but let's see that happen through a more gentle politics where we talk about issues and find what we can do to help everybody. And
As I said, if you can't see the change, be the change.
that's right. Well, thank you, Dennis. Thank you for joining us here. And thank all of you people for joining us here. If you'd like to see this again, go to MauiNeutralZone.com and watch it again. It's going to be posted on YouTube as well. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Aloha.